Rob Flax here. I play things with strings, I hit stuff, and I sing. And it's time for another episode of Fuzz Fiddle with Flax. Today we're looking at a vintage style fuzz that was designed by Analogman. Mike Piera in Connecticut. There's an Analogman box. And as we open it up, you'll see the Astrotone Fuzz. Now, according to Mike, this was modeled after the Astrotone and Samash fuzz boxes from 1966 to 1968. It has three knobs. There's volume, tone, and fuzz. Nice. First, Mike recreated the old Astrotone Fuzz exactly to spec, but in a smaller and friendlier enclosure. The originals were made in several different boxes, and like lots of vintage fuzzes of the early era, they were large, cumbersome, kind of unwieldy, so he put it in a much smaller, pedal board friendly enclosure. Top mounted jacks is a big plus, so it'll kind of fit on some real estate. One thing that he found, at least in his own personal testing, was that it didn't retain the low end. So he tweaked the circuit a little bit so that you could still, with the tone knob up, get some good vintage sounds, but with the tone knob rolled a little bit back, it would give you some more low end. This was available for sale in Guitar Center in the used section, and I plugged into it and went, that's a sound I've never heard before, and bought it because it was relatively affordable at the time. And now these are getting harder to find unless you contact Mike directly, in which case there's a bit of a wait time. Mike's famous for his very carefully handcrafted pedals that sometimes take a little while to get, the most notorious of which is the King of Tone pedal, for which there is an over 2-year-long wait list right now. I got one a couple years ago, and it's glorious. Matter of fact, let's see how this Analogman pedal sounds into that Analogman pedal. Maybe they stack nicely. Spoiler alert, they do stack nicely. As usual, my signal chain is the violin, Shirtler pickup going directly into the fuzz, going into my tone dexter, which is bypassed, going into an always-on Chase Bliss Condor, and an always-on Crazy Tube Circuits Golden Ratio, into the cab Zeus, into the interface. Here's my clean tone. Here's with the fuzz. Ooh, I just like it so much. It's smooth, which is a weird descriptor for a fuzz because usually fuzz is kind of aggressive, but compared to some other fuzzes in my arsenal, this is a really subtle and kind of mellow fuzz, at least when it's set with all the knobs at 2 o'clock. Thanks, Mick. Okay, let's turn off the mic so you can really hear what it sounds like. Just the pickup sound. It just happens to be that there's not a lot of gain in this. It doesn't have the kind of slam to the wall effect of some of the other fuzzes that you may have heard in other videos. And I'll link to some of those. That's nice. You set it kind of at the regular old settings and it gives you a ton of different colors to work with. It's very expressive and it works well with the bow and with pizzicato. If I strum and pluck softly, it cleans up. If I play harder, it gets dirtier. Let's do that with the bow. This is like a fuzz that's not actually a fuzz. It's almost behaving more like an overdrive. I bet I could exaggerate that further by turning the fuzz down and the volume up. And in fact, this is exactly what I do sometimes. I'll use this on guitar if I want some overdrive that kind of rolls off a little bit of the bottom end. Remember before when I was saying that the vintage circuit has a little less low end than Mike would like? That's how I use it on purpose. Okay, I'm going to roll the fuzz back and turn the volume up. That's pretty nice. It's pretty crispy, but just cleans up. I'm going to bring it back up to noon. Nah, who am I kidding? I want a little more fuzz. Let's dime it. Yes! Oh, I forgot how good this is. It's rare that I dime all the controls on a pedal, but this one at the full range is this just perfection, chef's kiss saturation. That sounds really lovely. But when I dial the fuzz back, it cleans up and behaves like an overdrive. So this is a really good, what I'm going to call a low gain fuzz. If you dime it all the way, it behaves like a fuzz and does the fuzz thing. But if you roll it back anywhere less than all the way up, it's like a slightly fuzzy overdrive, I guess. Maybe like a hard clipping distortion almost. The only control I haven't touched is the tone control. Let's see what the sweep of that is. I'm going to put the volume and fuzz back to a little bit less than all the way up, and let's explore the tone control. Now that's weird. I turned the tone all the way up and the fuzz cleaned up. This actually makes a lot of sense. Quite a few overdrive and fuzz circuits have some pretty interesting interactions with the low end. The more low end frequencies they get in there, the more it distorts. Something about low energy messes with a circuit in a way that high energy does not. Very interesting to consider when you're playing a violin that doesn't have any low notes. At these settings, this actually really reminds me of the Henrietta Bluebird fuzz that I demoed in another Fuzz Fiddle episode. There's no low end, it's not doing the caving in on itself thing, it's just fuzzy. Okay, let's roll it back. That sounds really good too. It's somehow not as dark as I would have expected. So that entire sweep of the tone knob doesn't really change that much. It's still moderately fuzzy, moderately saturated, moderately dynamic. Everything's pretty moderate on it. And sometimes that's why I'll use this Astrotone when I need a moderate fuzz. It's good at dialing in moderately fuzzy sounds. I want to run it into the King of Tone and see how it interacts with that, purely just because I know that they're going to get along and it's going to be glorious, but also because if this is only moderate, we can take it over the edge by adding some overdrive. Nice and moderate.
A few moments later.
Okay, this is pretty bad camera work, but my King of Tone is all the way over there, and the Astrotone is right here. So I'm just going to leave it set where it's set, and I'm going to turn on the overdrive side of the King of Tone. Let's have a listen. Let's mute the mics. Accidentally turned on some delay. The hazards of pedal boards. Okay, so the King of Tone has two sides. There's a yellow side and a red side. The boost and this are playing together really nicely. Still really dynamic. The overdrive, I'm going to set it a little more extreme to see. A lot of gain happening. Let me turn off the fuzz so you can hear just what the overdrive's doing. When I play soft, it's soft. When I dig in and play harder, it gets a little crunchier. So let's turn on the Astrotone and both sides of the King of Tone and see how that sounds. Those play together pretty nicely, and it makes sense. The strength of the King of Tone is it's sort of amp-like in its tendencies. It really is dynamic and allows you to have a lot of different colors and variations. So the Astrotone is a really nice pairing with the King of Tone because when I play soft, the Astrotone cleans up. And so then the King of Tone also cleans up, which means that I've got a lot of different colors to choose from just based on playing dynamics, even with just those knobs set just the way they are. So limitless possibilities, very exciting. There is a reasonable range, and one of the things that Mike at Analogman does really well is all of the knobs are set so that there's no bad sounds in there. No matter how you set the knobs, it's gonna be a usable sound that's gonna cut through in a band mix and sound really good. So shout out to Mike, you knocked it out of the park, and I'm so glad that I picked this up in the shop without really understanding it.
4 to 6 weeks later.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and click the bell if you like. You know, you could go there, get notifications for upcoming episodes. The background music for this episode features the Astrotone Fuzz, and if you'd like to download that, please visit my Patreon page. Thank you to my supporters on Patreon. You make this and a lot of other crazy ideas possible. I appreciate you. All right, see you in the next one. Bye.